Hello there YouTube, my name is Chuggy and today I am playing some Battlefield 3, playing Conquest on Marquez Monolith and Conquest on Grand Bazaar, and today guys it is time for question time part 24. Yet again guys, you guys have submitted a load of amazing questions, from tips to starting on YouTube to the situation in Syria, and today guys I'll be giving you my god honest answers to your great questions. If you've never seen this little series of videos of mine before, it is literally question and answer, and I will quite happily answer anything honestly on any topic. If I know about it, I'll be more than happy to give out, I don't know, my 2 pence on the matter. If you have any questions you would like me to answer next time, all you have to do is pop it down in the comments section below and I'll get to answering it next question time. Now, to briefly mention the gameplay, you'll be seeing 2 games here. This first game on Marquez Monolith and then a game on Grand Bazaar, and what they are great examples of the power of PTFO. In this game, one team, and in particular one squad, really played the objective hard and fast, and they got the deserved outcome. No problem with the result of this game here. And the second game, again, it was just a case of playing the objective, keeping the enemies at bay, and controlling the situation thereon. So I hope you enjoyed the gameplays, and I'm going to get on with your great questions this week. And the question 1 this week comes from Trey Kubera, and they ask thoughts on NASCAR and any tips I would give out to anyone starting out on YouTube. Well, first of all, NASCAR, I'll be honest, I haven't really sort of seen any proper coverage of it. We frankly don't get it over here in the UK. But what I will say is that I think a lot of people kind of take the wrong end of the stick with it. When I first sort of was made aware of NASCAR, I had the pretty stereotypical point of view of, oh, it's just left turn racing. You know, it's just, oh, turn left for 500 laps, or whatever the case might be. And while that is a factuality of the sport, it's also a lot more. The cars are very, very powerful, they're very, very heavy, they're constantly moving. There's a lot of skill to drive those cars. That's something I didn't really appreciate until I started to read more into it. And when you have 40 or so cars, all within inches of each other, all doing like 200 miles an hour, great amount of skill required to drive them. So really, yeah, I respect NASCAR, although personally I don't think I'd watch it. I don't know, I think it's just purely because I've grown up with sort of European motorsports, as it were, that it's just a different driving style, different sort of methodology behind it. You know, I'd rather watch, say, touring cars than NASCAR, just because of just how the racing is compared. I don't know, preference, I guess. So yeah, NASCAR, fair play to them. A lot more difficult than people give it credit for, but not kind of my cup of tea, though, I'll say that. Now, tips for starting out on YouTube. First of all, always make the videos you want to make. You see a lot of sort of channels just producing videos just so they can get viewed, and at that point you're making a video, so why are you making a video just to get viewed? I guess you're going to have your, you know, what you want to achieve, what you want to get out of the situation before you go into it, I guess. So to make what you want to make, you know, for instance, I wanted to just make videos to talk about games, talk about gaming news, whatever else, and all sorts of awesome sort of things have sprung from that, this question time series being one. And so yeah, just, you know, do what you want to do. Don't be downhearted if your channel doesn't grow and that kind of stuff. YouTube is pretty fickle. You know, the big guys get bigger, the small guys don't get a look in. That's just the way that the search system works, unfortunately. So, you know, just keep producing high quality stuff. If you're producing quality stuff, people enjoy it, word will spread, and eventually you will start getting a following, etc. And yeah, it's not easy, unfortunately. So yeah, you know, just stick with it. It isn't an easy process, I'm afraid, but you know, sometimes you do something. In fact, one thing I will say is tagging is really important on your videos, so they get sort of shown up in the search results. Do make sure you tag your videos relevantly, and yeah, just, you've got to work at it for a bit. I'm afraid it's not something which just happens. And yeah, the searching in particular does get a bit skewed in big channels' favours, which, que sera, sera. So yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for the great questions, Trey. Hopefully that answers those 2 for you. And yeah, with that, I'll move on to the next question. The next question comes from the John Denham, and they ask 3 questions. So first of all, in terms of recording gameplay and things, as I do, what do I use? The Elgato Game Capture HD or the Hauppauge HD PVR? Well, some of you will know that I have been using the Hauppauge. I'm actually moving to the Elgato Game Capture. I was given one for Christmas, and it's a cracking little device. Lots of really cool features. The software is really very nice indeed, and I'm just slowly migrating all my gear, all my software, all my exporting stuff from one to the other. Slowly, I've used Elgato's software to capture from the Hauppauge, so that hasn't been such a bad thing. But getting used to streaming, and this kind of comes on to John's sort of second question here about how come the streaming is taking a little while to get sorted out. Yeah, I'm just having 2 particular problems. First of all, my controller's actually died, so I haven't been able to play any console games at any sort of length without it starting to go really very strange. There's something something gone wrong on the motherboard, on the controller. It's yeah, I'll push one button, it does about 3 or 4 things, and I can't figure out how to fix it. So yeah, I'm having to wait for a new controller to arrive, but also I've got a problem with the audio, and it's not the audio in terms of, say, recording Skype audio or whatever else. I've got that sorted. It's actually getting the game audio through in good quality, because I use a headset, and that headset has a special bit of kit which the audio needs to go through. It's just a case of splitting that off and getting it into sort of the converters and things to get a nice, good, clean sound through, which doesn't sound too distorted and things like that. So yeah, I've just been sourcing out bits and pieces, parts, whatever, to get that working. And John's sort of final question is about servers that sort of you guys as subscribers can join on, which myself and the lads will be playing in while we're playing some Battlefield, etc. Well, I will actually kind of use this as a bit of a tangent. Yeah, sure, when live streaming and stuff is going, I'll make it well aware sort of which servers and things we're on. And it is my full intention to do some live streams and say we're in the server, come on in and join us and get a bit of a community game night or something going on, I don't know. But I will do sort of a little public service announcement for you guys at this point. If you are a Battlefield 3 console player and you do not reside in the United States, I repeat, do not reside in the United States, prepare for a culture shock. EA is in the process of moving all non-US servers to the United States. Now you might go, well, what's the big hoo-ha about that? That's, what's the problem? You might not think of it at the time, but be prepared really for latency, massive latency. So the whole point of having servers geographically close to you is the time from the message getting from your console, PC, to the server and back again, to make that time as short as possible. So the actions, so you push buttons, as the world updates, all that is synced as quickly as it can. And normally you'd be looking at maybe a ping of maybe 100, under 100 milliseconds, maybe 150 or so, to a relatively geographically local server, depending on your internet, of course. With EA moving the servers from Europe, Asia to the United States, you're going to be looking at a starting of a minimum of 150 milliseconds, purely because it is the time difference to get from one place here to somewhere further away. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting experience playing basically on servers where anyone who isn't playing from the United States is going to have a disadvantage. We're going to get a lot of latency, a lot of shots going around corners and all this kind of stuff. And we know this from experience. Battlefield 3's netcode is by far from perfect. There already is a little bit of issue with latency even when it is local. So public service announcement, keep an eye out for that lag, and unfortunately it doesn't look like there's going to be much you can do. This story only broke 1 or 2 days ago, thanks to the guys over on Reddit. I've done a little bit of trace routing and pinging, and I can see that there's some weird hopping going around. So yeah, it's unfortunate, be prepared for lag. And just as sort of a heads up, best way to deal with lag when you've got lag in a first-person shooter like Battlefield is to dial down your gameplay. Stop rushing around as much, and be a little more aware of your surroundings, take cover a little more often perhaps, and just anticipate the enemy's movement if you can. You'll find a lot of 50-50 fights now will not go your way, that kind of thing, and bullets going around corners and things. Best example I could think, when Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was released, there was sort of the magic bullets phenomena, where basically the game would artificially give lag to people to try and make it sort of an even playing field. Think those kind of tactics to try and deal with that, just dialing it down a bit. an unfortunate situation, and well, depending on how the games play out once I get my controller sorted out, I will be seriously considering if I will rent a server, for instance, now for game nights or whatever else where I stream it, because put frankly, it's kind of a really sucky deal if you don't live in the US. So, sorry to bum you guys out about that, but public service announcement, a very sucky situation, so I'm sorry about that. But anyway, John, thank you for your 3 great questions, and yes, I will be getting some live streaming going shortly, and you guys will be involved. That is a promise. So, next question comes from TomJake767, and some of you will know him as Tom from the squad, and he asks, if I could race in any of the following racing series, which one would I choose? And he's this Formula 1, GP2, Formula Renault, World Touring Car Championship, British Touring Car Championship, the World Rally Championship, IndyCar, or NASCAR. Well, I'm going to be a bit of an old heartless romantic and say the British Touring Car Championship. That was the series I grew up watching, and there is... It's hard to describe, really, in particular, the 90s British touring cars to someone who hasn't seen it before. Because all touring cars are sort of cars you'd see on the street, but they are racing versions of it. But the thing with the British touring cars, especially 98, 99, when they really started to get some momentum behind them and some viewership and stuff, is you just had some all-out amazing racing. And I guess I got sort of a bit of, there's a nice term for this, something, rosy eyes, I don't know, brain fart, and I just would love to drive touring cars as a sort of competitive thing. And I guess this is kind of a bit of the reason why I'm so hyped for the GRC Touring Car Championship, which will be, well, I'll have some news on that hopefully in the next week or so, when that will all be kicking off, because, touring car racing is pretty damn awesome, a bit of argy-bargy, crazy movements, crashing, of course, it's all there. So, yeah, touring cars for me. And in particular the British Touring Car Championship, so thank you, Tom, for the question. Next question comes from HKA96, and they ask, which gaming console will I be playing on in the future, i.e. the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox 720? Well, I'm a PlayStation fan, so put frankly, I'll be looking at the PlayStation 4. And on, I believe it's the 20th of February, Sony have called the PlayStation Meeting. I believe they did this last year, where basically they're going to talk about the PlayStation brand and what the future will be. And a lot of people are kind of saying, well, this is where they're going to announce the PlayStation 4. Now, there's a question a little bit later about what I'd like to see from the next sort of generation of consoles, so I'll leave what I'll hopefully will be talking about there, but yeah, I'll be a PlayStation person myself. The reason I don't play on Xbox is, frankly, I don't think you should have to pay money after buying the console for things like online play. I think that should be included in the initial price, so I'll say that much. So anyway, HK, thank you for the great question. Next question comes from Gaming Revolver HD, and they ask, if Battlefield 4 came out, how much do I think it should be? And I hope you mean in terms of price. Well, put frankly, here in the UK, basically brand new released games are about £40, and I think that is the price point they should stay at. As long as I've been playing games, they've always been, sort of console releases have been £40, and sort of platinum games, best-selling games have been 20. And I think that's the way it should stay. You see a few companies trying to push it more towards the 50-60 mark, and put frankly, I will not pay that. I will wait for the game to come down in price, or I will try and find somewhere where it's a bit cheaper. So, for example, the SimCity, new SimCity being made by EA, they're looking £50-60. I pre-ordered it for 40. So, que sera, sera. £40 for me is the perfect price point for a game. Cost of a night out, but you could sort of play it for weeks. I don't know. So yeah, £40 for me, Gaming Revolver. Hope that answers your question. Next question comes from I'm Gonna Take Your Name but Add HD, and they ask, what changes would I like for the PlayStation 4? Well, put frankly, and I think I kind of answered this before, is more processing power, more RAM, just more improvements in general. Now, RAM for me is the big thing. Games consoles, as of today, now have 256, 512 megabytes of RAM, compared to a general purpose computer you can just buy to, send emails, go on Facebook, whatever the case might be. They'll have gigabytes, orders of magnitude more, you're talking 8 or so times. I really do think that the next generation consoles must have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM starting to have a real chance to have any sort of future success. The thing with games consoles is that they are, relatively speaking, well, they're static, they're a fixed set of hardware, so if you can give the sort of game developers more and more things to play with, they'll make better and better games. more little details, more fancy technology, etc. So, you know, more powerful processors, more RAM. I think, for instance, a hard disk is just de facto. You should definitely have a hard disk like the PS3 does, which you can swap out and, you know, expand if you so feel the need. Processor architecture, I could talk about, you know, the pros and cons of, say, using x86, 64, or power. In in particular the PlayStation standpoint, that's a compatibility issue which may happen. But yeah, just more power, more RAM in particular, and hopefully game developers will have more of the resources they need to make the games that we all want to play. So there we go. Thank you very much. I'm going to take your name, but add HD for that great question. Next question comes from BobNob1964, and they ask, when I played rugby, what position was I? Well, I was a prop, and that was mainly because I'm a relatively big guy, not particularly quick, but I could stop people quite quickly. And so yeah, I was well, I think that pretty much sums it up, really. If you know rugby, you know what that means. So there we go. Thank you, Bob, for the great question. Next question comes from Just Me Alive and Kicking, and they ask, what do I think about punk rock? Well, I'll be honest. I've talked about music and stuff in general in the past, and I've kind of said, you know, basically I'll listen to anything, as I don't particularly have a favourite genre. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't listened to much punk rock music. Obviously there's kind of a bit of a scene with it, and I hope I'm thinking this right, of sort of, let me get time frame right, I want to say 70s, 80s, leather jackets, slick hair. Am I thinking modern rockers? Probably. Anyway, yeah, I haven't really listened to much, or at least as far as I know, I haven't listened to much punk rock music, so I couldn't give you an honest answer at this point, but I will reply to you in the comments once I've done a little bit of researching what exactly is, and go from there. So thank you, Just Me Alive and Kicking, for that. Next question, or next couple of questions I should say, comes from Blown Tire, and they ask, first of all, would I happily check one of your subscribers' YouTube channels and give you pointers on what you can do to improve, change up, etc.? Yes, guys, absolutely. Send me a message sort of on YouTube, and heck, I might even make it a series, which I do from time to time, just giving you guys pointers on what I think works, etc. And as I said before, you know, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is make what you want to make, and you know, if it's good quality, people will watch it. It's just a matter of getting people to it. So yeah, definitely send me a message, and we'll go from there. Next question from them, what's the worst physical pain I've ever been in? Well, kind of a funny story, might make you squirm a little bit, so I'll try and keep the gore out, but I burnt quite a lot of the skin off my right hand. I don't know quite if it has a medical name, but on your hand, in between your sort of thumb and sort of the rest of your fingers, there's kind of like a little flap of skin. I basically burnt all that off from my right hand. I was doing some work in design technology, basically like metalworking in secondary school. I was heating up a piece of metal and was using a set of tongs, but I didn't realise at the time that the tongs were basically knackered. They were crap. And I heated the metal up from the forge, went to go and put it on like an anvil to hammer it or something, and the tongs, it just gave way, and the idiot I was like, oh god, that's going to fall on the floor, I better catch that. And I catch it in my right hand. And you know you're in trouble when you're ready to, like, you're braced for pain, and then you don't feel anything at all. So yeah, that thing hit my hand, it made contact for all of maybe less than a second, it went on the floor of course, and I literally went, okay, that's not right, because literally I couldn't feel a thing in my right hand. So I was sent off to the nurse's office, they put some ointment and stuff on there, and I kid you not, it was 30-40 minutes before I had feeling again, and all I can describe it was sheer agony. I quickly got sent to the hospital, they did some more ointment and stuff, and basically I had my hand wrapped up so no air could get to the bit of skin I'd burnt for about 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, that was not a pleasant experience, although I do swear it's given me a bit more dexterity in my right hand. Yeah, weird. But yeah, there we go, that's probably the worst pain I've been in. What's my favourite map in Battlefield 3? Tel El Market, introduced of course in Battlefield 3 Aftermath. Something about the verticality, the layout, I really dig, sort of just the flow you get on there, so that's a cool map. My favourite Battlefield 3. And what would I say, and well, finally, what would be in my dream Battlefield map? Well, really, you know, a variety. Battlefield is all about variety for me. You can have urban areas, you can have massive open spaces, but what I don't think we've seen too much of is a map which combines both, and in particular, a sort of style of map making which we haven't seen in a little while, where you're based in a scenario. So the first Battlefield game I played was Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, and every map had a story going into it. You were on this team, this was their situation, this is the lie of the land, go and fight it out, you are now the actors in this story. Make this story happen, basically. And, you know, there was some really interesting sort of gameplay you could spawn from that. So, for instance, maps where one team had tanks, the other team had aircraft. Maps where, for example, there's a map called Special Op, where I believe it was the Americans had one base and the Chinese had 4 bases, and basically there was a massive river you had to get across. There was a base in the middle of the river, and the Chinese had an air base on the other side of this river, and you had to attack it and capture it. So some real guerrilla warfare style stuff, and there's sort of a story behind it and everything. It just felt really very cool, but you had this sort of awesome mix of, you know, just different scenarios to be in, and of course every time you play it, different people, you get different outcomes. So yeah, scenario-based maps with a variety of sort of locales, you know, rather than just say purely, you know, urban map or purely open map. A nice mix with a scenario style thing I think would be quite cool. So there we go, Blown Tire, thank you for those great questions. Next question this week comes from Dr. BCD PS3, and they ask, first of all, can I add you on PSN? Well, the answer to that is unfortunately no. My friends list is full. It's only have a limit even of 100 people on the friends list, and well, my list is full, and I play games with most of that 100 sets, so no, I can't do that unfortunately. That's your first question. Second question, what is my opinion on US gun control / politics / laws? And, well, thirdly, have I considered using Twitch to live stream rather than YouTube? Well, let me answer the third question first, because that's a relatively shorter answer compared to the other one. So, yeah, I did look at using Twitch for a while. But the thing I kind of saw with YouTube over Twitch is, well, first of all, I am relatively speaking, I'm more of a YouTube channel than a live streaming channel, and you know, obviously streaming on YouTube has its advantages because of that. You know, the videos will be, you know, turned in, or the live streams I should say, will be turned into videos which you can then watch later. Now Twitch does that as well, I know that, but I don't have, you know, a subscriber base on Twitch. I'd have to build that up, and I think this, you know, I'm more used to the way YouTube works, the tools within YouTube, that I just decided to go that way, and well, que sera, sera, here I am. So that's that. Second question is a really interesting one, and I'd love to know, you know, any American viewers between you, you know, where the kind of, you know, I don't know, thermostat of what people are thinking are on this kind of issue to do with gun control, because, you know, as a, you know, uninformed outsider, you know, in the UK we don't have mass firearms sort of availability as you do in the States. Of course, it's a different kind of reality, because, of course, when the United States was founded, it was in the Second Amendment, I believe, I hope I got that right, where everyone has the right to bear arms. Now, that may have been true back then, you know, obviously wildlife, everything was expanding, it was, relatively speaking, a lawless land, because, of course, you know, people were still expanding into the US at that time. You know, there wasn't sort of policemen round every corner. You know, there was kind of an understanding, a need for having firearms. But today it's a different world, and I honestly think that, yeah, there is a case for control these days. You know, I don't understand why it's legal, for instance, to go into a store and buy, for instance, an M16 or an M4. Why would you ever need one of those for personal defense, say, or anything like that? If you have got, say, an intruder in your home, a pistol or something would be much more versatile in terms of what you could do with it. You know, for instance, you know, just buying in general assault weaponry I find a bit strange unless you're going off to war. So really, I think if I were sort of in front of the piece of paper to sign it into law, I would change the law in the US, which I'm sure it would be controversial, to mean the sale of all automatic firearms would be illegal. You'd only be allowed semi-automatic, so think pistols, rifles for hunting, that kind of thing, and even then, much more stringent checks. So you know, it's, as I understand the system, it's like 3 to 5 day waiting period or something like that. You know, I would, you know, have a license that you have to get, you know, have to prove to a body, say, that you can safely, responsibly store, clean, work, etc., the firearm, and go from there. You know, in the UK there are firearms. You need to have a license to do that, and I think that's the way really I think it should be handled. And only people with perhaps a need to have firearms. So, for instance, you know, if you live out in the wilderness and, you know, a bear could come along and try and eat you, yeah, you know, that makes sense for you to have a weapon to try and protect yourself. If you live in a suburban home and, you know, there's a low crime rate, whatever else, you'd hope you'd feel safe enough not to own a weapon. Controversial. I'd love to know your views, especially you American viewers of mine, because this is something we just do not get exposed to over here. We sort of hear about it when the tragedy happens. I mean, Sandy Hook was a terrible tragedy, and you know, that's it. It's news for one day. But yeah, it's an interesting issue, and I'd love to know your views on it as always. So next question comes from Lancer J, and they ask, they've always had fun playing Mario Party games, but you don't see sort of a mature version of those kind of games. You know, say little mini FPS games or something like that. How come? Why do you think that is? Well, that's an interesting question. So, like, I think really part of the reason for that is, like, you know, Mario Party kind of stuff is that it is easy to play and it's casual. And, you know, if you've got a party of people, it's very unlikely that everyone's going to have, you know, incredible, say, Battlefield Mouse that you could basically set up a LAN party and just play Battlefield with your buddies. The thing with those kind of games is they're easy to pick up, they provide a quick laugh, and often, I guess, the best way to get a laugh is to have, relatively speaking, immature scenarios to just, you know, make the novelty of it all seem a little more novel. So, you know, I'm just trying to think of a good example off the top of my head. You know, for instance, Mario Kart. You know, you've got obviously the various power-ups and things. You know, being taken out by a spinning tortoise is, relatively speaking, quite unlikely to happen in the real world. Thus, the sort of absurdity of that happening makes it funny. I don't know. I think if you could implement perhaps a more realistic sort of first-person shooter which was easy to play, then perhaps you might have a chance. But I think it is just, you know, relatively speaking, you know, well, it depends what you want, and I guess it's, you know, the audience involved and everything else. A really interesting question, actually. It is. I do think it's just, you know, obviously not everyone's going to be a hardened first-person shooter player, etc. But yeah, interesting. Guys, do you have any ideas what you'd do if you were going to make like a party game, but not make it sort of, relatively speaking, unrealistic? I don't know. I really don't know what I'd do, actually. Because I'm thinking, oh, well, you'd have Gran Turismo, you'd have a racing bit, and then you'd have a shooting bit, a la Battlefield. Hang on, then you just got Gran Turismo and Battlefield. Interesting question, Lancer J. Excellent question, and yeah, there we go. So yeah, a great question. Thank you very much for that. Now, next question comes from Death in Flames, and they ask, first of all, do I think, in terms of Formula 1, this is, Caterham or Marussia will ever score a point? And number two, do I think Toyota Racing would have ever done, would they have had any success if they hadn't had pulled out of Formula 1? So first of all, Caterham and Marussia. Caterham have been a massive disappointment in my eyes. I was expecting much more progress from them than they have been able to achieve. I do expect Caterham and Marussia will score a point at some point, but really they've just got to, in both terms, they just have to sort of progress, I guess. Now, Marussia, I think, is doing that more than any other Formula 1 team of the new teams. Well, HRT are gone now, although they might be back as Scorpion Racing, but that's another tale. I'm a comedian. For another day. But anyway, Marussia are making some very good noises. You know, they've got a deal with McLaren to help them develop the car. They've ditched the CFD approach completely. They are going to start using the wind tunnels a bit more, and I think they're just going about being a Formula 1 team better than Caterham. I'll be honest, I had high hopes, and they've not come to fruition. Now, as for Toyota, I think Toyota are going to kick themselves a bit. They were spending the most of any Formula 1 team while they were in the sport, and they were making some progress, but not much. And yeah, it's just one of those things. But you know, it's you know, in hindsight, what would happen? You know, what would Honda do if they were still in the sport? Well, there wouldn't be Mercedes. So you know, it's difficult to say. You know, they're making slow but steady progress. I expect that if they continue to stay in the sport, they would have started to challenge for wins, etc. But I think that would cost them more and more money, and perhaps, well, they would have left anyway because it was unsustainable to stay in the sport. That's the way it goes, I guess. So anyway, thank you, Death and Flames, for all those great questions. Now, next question comes from Maverick SASR, and they ask, any advice on how to gain views and subscribers? Well, I'll be honest, as I kind of said in the previous question, just make the videos you want to make, and trust me, if the videos are enjoyed, people will come back and watch them again. That's been my experience of it anyway, and please guys tell me if you see it different. The things with, in particular, with viewers and subscribers is that's very much a YouTube controlled side of things. You know, the big guys get bigger purely because, you know, they get views. Those views are used as part of the search results, and by you being part of the search results, they get more views. So it's kind of a tricky mix. So just do the best you can, produce quality, and you will grow. That's been my experience of it. And yeah, you know, I ask you guys constantly for feedback. I think that's another very valid point to give. You know, always try and improve where you can, and that should stand you in good stead, I think. So hopefully that will help you there, Maverick. Thank you for the question. Next question is going to be a really cool one to finish off this week, actually. And first of all, thank you very much, Superbat Robin, for asking it. And they ask, out of myself and the 3 other squad mates I regularly play Battlefield with, that's Mike, Tom, and Matt, who's the best? Who is of the best skill and coordinated, who's the highest rank, etc. Well, I think I'm right in saying that Matt is the highest rank at this point, but the overall best player is going to be tricky to decide, and I have given this a little bit of thought. So, it's really difficult because Battlefield is really a game where the ability to adapt, I'd say, is more valuable than being particularly good at one particular role. For instance, Matt and Mike's are sensational gunfighters. If there were no vehicles in Battlefield and it was just sort of a gun-on-gun style game, they would have no problem in soaring up the MVP boards. But I know, for example, in both cases, you know, being able to destroy vehicles is kind of their weakness. You know, not to say that they can't do it, but certainly, you know, it's not what they would normally go about and do. You know, for instance, myself, I try and play all the kits the best I can, but I'm not really a master of any. You know, I'd say of the kits that I do play quite a lot of, the Recon is obviously the most there, and I do have a bit of nous with it. But I'd have to say, the one person who I think is the best all-rounder is Tom. He can destroy the vehicles, he can drive the vehicles, and he can handle himself in gunfights, and he has the tactical nous. Now, the fact that we all communicate, that does help us with the tactical sort of positioning and everything else. But no, I think Tom's got the edge on all of us, I'll be brutally honest. So yeah, kudos Tom, keep it up. And I'm sure Matt and Mike's now going to be throwing sort of darts at pictures of me now. But no, as a group, as a team, we come together, we balance ourselves out, and I think we're a force to be reckoned with. I'll say that. So yeah, great question, and there we go. I think that pretty much wraps it up time-wise. I'm going to have to leave it there. So guys, as always, thank you so very much for your superb questions on all sorts of topics. There was a question about Syria I had hoped to get to, but unfortunately I haven't had time this week. But as always, I'll try and answer those sort of questions in comment form in the comments where the questions were asked. As always, guys, thank you so very much for watching. If you have any questions you would like to answer, or like me to answer, all you have to do is pop them down in the comment section of this video. And if you want to see more videos from myself, all you have to do is subscribe. So anyway, guys, I've been Chuggy. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time out on the battlefield.